flip side of things, England obviously going down to France and huge pressure on their coach, Eddie Jones. It's been building and building. You only have to read any of the UK papers and everyone's favourite in New Zealand, Stephen Jones. Eddie must go and should be replaced by Warren Gatland, so should be replaced by a Kiwi. But Eddie Jones, Wayne Pivac, Gregor Townsend, 3 coaches under huge pressure from the home nations. The fans all want them gone. They all want Shaun Edwards in to replace them. Jeff, those 3 coaches, will all 3 be there come World Cup time next year?
Yeah, when they say Shaun Edwards and they say you can come back and coach, he doesn't bring any of the French players with him. They know that, right? Yeah. He's got to coach the teams that they've got, and this is about talent, it's about stock and the way that they're playing. Do I think they'll sack their coaches? No, I think it's too close to a Rugby World Cup, but there's added pressure, and all of a sudden you'll get to those autumn internationals, and when you go on the tour in the middle of the year, you still have to perform, JK. That's the expectation as a head coach. They'll have to make some adjustments, and there'll be some convincing they'll need to do with some of their players and with the public and clearly the media in saying that Stephen Jones will have a crack at anyone and any opportunity. Usually it's us. It's nice to have the attention on somebody else.
Except for the woman who loves the women's rugby.
Yes.
I think the interesting thing for me, Mils, and you've lived over there and you've been in. So Wales defending champions, and it's a fishbowl over there. Ask, you know, Graham Henry and Sir Graham Henry and Sir Steve Hansen. It's really hard to coach over there. It's like New Zealand. Townsend came in with high expectations, under-delivered. Eddie Jones is always going to be under the most pressure because England aren't dissimilar to us. You know, you've got to win a Six Nations on your way to winning a World Cup. It's like us losing the Bledisloe or losing against...
We haven't done that in so long, that doesn't count.
Exactly. OK, South Africa then.
Yeah, just South Africa. Let's stick with something that's relevant.
So, and so they will be under incredible pressure, and that's what the Six Nations is like. Will they get rid of them? I don't think they will. I think there's too much at stake and we're too close to the World Cup.
Doesn't that there, though, showcase the expectations that the Six Nations have on their coaches compared to what we have here as a championship? You know, obviously we've sort of dominated apart from last year when we didn't quite win it, but the fact is the expectations for all those nations to come out and win year in, year out, you know, is obviously producing, you know, the goods. And the way France have sort of kicked on from that, you know, having... you know, their development. Isn't it great when you look at it in terms of comparing, competitions? That is, you know, historically the best.
When I watched this game, though, it was the fact when England had to play some rugby, they made mistakes, made errors, and they didn't have a game plan that was going to be able to generate points quickly. Yes, they could wear you down. Yes, they were prepared to go into battle. Yes, they could get yourselves some sort of opportunity on attack. But in the end, they just made so many errors, JK, for me. And I look at the fact that France actually didn't play that well. They just did enough to win this game. But for England, fundamental mistakes. They were turning the ball over, weren't winning the contest at the breakdown. You know, when you're doing this against arguably one of the best teams in the world right now, you are going to come off second best. They failed this test, I think, JK, but they'll need to be better to be a contender in 15 months' time.
There's pressure, isn't it? It's pressure. And I guess, you know, they're lacking a bit of confidence. You know, the week before, they were down to 14 men right from the get-go. So I think there's still enough signs there for England.
Yeah,
so, hey,
have England fallen that far? In reality?
I don't think so. But obviously the expectation on Eddie, given what he's done when he first came, compared to where he's at now, you know, they're calling for his head. Well, Stephen Jones is. That's for sure.
I think technically one thing that I noticed changed a wee bit from the World Cup. I don't think the last 2 yards of the defence was as aggressive as it was at the World Cup. So they're coming up fast, but then they seem to be passive, especially against the French. And so they were losing a lot of those contacts, of which then the French were getting over the advantage line and getting a roll on. You know, I come back to the under-20s. You know, I said the Italians had a really good under-20s. Last time that England were really strong consistently, they'd come from a good 20s. That French side 3 years ago was their under-20 side that won the World Cup. So you can see some form. But at the end of the day, there's just so much pressure. There's so much money on this. There's so much things that put you under pressure. But I think Eddie particularly is under more pressure than the rest.
It'll be interesting to see in a couple of years' time if there's a gulf from not having had the under-20s for the last couple of years, which are going to come back next year, but we'll see if that has actually left a hole. Talking about how good France are means, well, look, I love watching this trial. Watch it any time. It's probably not going to be quite so fun for some of the guys, but let's go back, try from the end of the earth.
There it is again, Gonzalez, Delot, Benazzi, Interback, Laurent Caban, Delot, what a superb movement, what a try, one of the all-time great tries.
JK, you made your tackle. You made your tackle.
Actually, the only thing that worries me is some of those names, their sons are now playing.
That's what makes me feel old. Emil Muliaina, one of my favourite all-time players, and now you're watching his son.
I had a unique view of that. I was on the bench.
I
was on the bench and I was like, oh no. You know, look, it was a remarkable test to be a part of. Series, actually, France coming here, and it gave you a sense of what they were exactly capable of, and we're seeing it now. In the current time, that's the sort of rugby I see them instinctively wanting to play.
How far ahead have they come in the last, well, possibly since the last World Cup, Millsy?
Well, I think what you're seeing is an element where we haven't seen in the past. Before you'd say, you know, they'll turn up and they'll have a crap game and lose by 40 the following week. They'll turn around and win. We're now seeing consistency, and the consistency is the fact that what you spoke about, JK, you know, the under-20s team really coming through together. Yes, they didn't play as well as what they would have wanted to against the England, but what do? They turn up when they need to be able to win. So that consistency now with the French side is very evident, as opposed to one week they're good, the next week they're horrible, the following week they're outstanding.
What I'm noticing is actually a mix between what I would call Southern Hemisphere style rugby and Northern Hemisphere style rugby, right across the Six Nations side. So, you know, Sean Edwards coached with Gats. Gats took some New Zealand, but then adapted. You know, we see them, they do the big, heavy, slow ball stuff, but then they're starting to play. And I think the French have got both those styles going. I don't think it's any credit to Southern Hemisphere, it's just that we play a different style and they've adapted a combination, which I think they're better at the moment. Are we struggling to adapt with Northern Hemisphere? Well, we did last year, and we'll decide this November.
The finishing table, I mean, they cleared out really France and Ireland at the top in the Six Nations and winning that Grand Slam as well. Here is that table, well clear at the top, and then a heck of a gulf between Ireland and England as well. I guess the only question for France is going to be that pressure of expectation, Jeff. A World Cup on home soil, they are building, they know they have got this team, they're flying up the rankings.
Yeah, it's an
or do they
interesting one,
I'm French, I don't care.
Well, I think they'll ride that wave of emotion. They'll ride that wave of support. Then all of a sudden they've got, I think, everyone in behind them. And the way that they're playing, the composure they're playing with, and the fact they are young. And a lot of that sometimes can just wash over you, the fact that in the end we're on such a roll. It's whether or not they have an odd setback in the next 15 months, whether they lose a key player, a key individual. I think, JK, that might be the only time all of a sudden you start losing that cohesiveness. You lose a test match you shouldn't lose. They're not doing that right now. And to your point, Mils, the fact they look like a team, this is un-French-like, is the fact that every week I look at them and I think, JK, they're going to win because across the board they have the measure of their opposition.
For me, they're favourites.
Yep.
For me, they're favourites for the World Cup at the moment, and those things can change. Like, if you asked me to pick the All Blacks today, I'd pick it on form, and those things can change. But right now, I think they're favourites. I firmly believe, like England did in 2002, you've got to come down and win with a bit of adversity. They came down here, they beat us in Wellington. I think Neil Back got
down to about 13 at one point, weren't they? Yeah.
But they won those games, and those things give you confidence. Them winning this at home against England when it was in the balance for a long time will give them confidence. You need that confidence so that when you get to the World Cup, it's not new. You know, those experiences, Mils, you've lived them before.
Yeah, but they've lived also winning, and winning against, you know, not the minnows. These are the top teams. When you talk about top four teams, they're actually doing it convincingly. So that will give them some strength as well. And you're right. I mean, injuries is going to play a big part. How deep is this sort of squad? How much depth has he actually got? So they're in a hell of a good place.
Get the sort of momentum that they're getting. We'll have the same type of threats. I'm seeing us on top of the ball, not presenting the ball cleanly enough, Mils, for us to take advantage of our speed and our skill.
And for those little wee things, you need really big buy-in, because it's the smallest things, but it makes a massive difference. And so you're seeing, yes, they're going forward, but the times that they're not going forward, their first instinct is to get that ball out. And look how fast that ball is becoming. The carries are really good. The next person that's coming, around the corner, they're getting really quick ball again. There's no doubt in their mind what they need to do, get that ball out. And what happens? They're whipping it out from the base. And so it's really, really, really quick.
It's not rocket science, though, is it? To go, I need to get the ball away from my opposition, away from the body.
Well, it's also system science, right? Like, when you're showing the French, I'm watching the English, and they're coming forward 3 yards and then planting. Whereas if you play the French, you've actually got to get them over over their advantage line, get in front of them, really win that contact. So those systems are coached, right? The defensive system in England, I think the first thing Eddie will need to have a look at is that. But then if there's new techniques, then we need to start thinking about what we're going to implement, you know, this long reach or how we're going to do it. The Irish I like because they have this swinging, I call it a swinging attack.
Yeah,
swing,
absolutely.
Got many guys in motion. So there's a lot of teams that have showed their cards for next year's World Cup, and I think it's really exciting. I can't wait for November.
Just my small point with that is, but it's not so focused on the gain line, it's on getting quick position.
Yeah.
So it's not, don't let the attack, defence reset, realign, come forward to you. Just move it anyway, and they're prepared to concede the gain line to get quick ball.